So, making this video, I was gonna pretend that I didn't know what Yu-Gi-Oh was, just for being able to make the joke that there's also a card game based on Dungeon Dice Monsters. But to properly talk about this game, I'm going to have to compare it to Yu-Gi-Oh as a reference point. So, here we go. Today we're talking about a video game based on a board game, based on an anime filler arc of an anime that's based on a card game. Well, it's not based on a card game, but it is about a card game. Whatever could go wrong with this? So the basic idea of Dungeon Dice Monsters is not unlike the special duel from Season 1 against the Paradox Brothers, where you have to make your way to the other side of the board to even hurt your opponent's life points. But instead of life points, here we have hard points, and you only have 3 of them. So 3 direct attacks and you lose. The issue here is that once you get a monster close enough for a direct attack, there's a really good chance that you're just gonna win, because your opponent probably won't be able to kill the monster you have within 2 more turns. But how do you even get to the other side of the board? Well, that's what we get into now, because it is interesting. So let's start at the beginning. Since this game is based on dice instead of cards, you don't have a deck, you have a dice pool, which consists of 12 dice that you choose before the game starts. Of course, it being such a small pool, you lose a little bit of the RNG that comes with having a 40 or so card deck. And since you can actually pick which 3 dice you roll at the start of every turn, it really makes for chances to get strategy based on what you most need at that time, compared to just drawing a card and hoping it's the thing you actually need. On the other hand, they are dice, literally one of the oldest RNG devices ever invented by people. So I'd say that balances out decently well. These dice come in a number of different colours: red, blue, yellow, green, grey and black. None of these colours really matter, other than black. Black are trap dice, which allow you to lay traps or other item-like spots on the board. All the other colours are just monsters. They have different typings, but that largely seems unimportant outside of maybe a few monster effects that use these types in that effect. What's a more important aspect of the dice is the crests that are on it. Of course, each die has 6 faces, all with a crest on it. The crests you can get are movement. It's pretty obvious. You use these to move your monsters around the board once they've been summoned. You'll probably end up needing quite a few of these. Attack are used to attack. Some monsters have more powerful attacks that require you to use extra attack crests. In my experience, you don't need to roll that many of these, but it's always good to have some. Defense. This one can actually reduce the damage a monster takes when it is attacked. Monsters have a strength and a defense stat. You would assume they also have a health stat, but they have hearts instead. As far as I can tell, 1 heart is equal to 10 health points. Attacking monsters' attack minus defending monsters' defense is the damage the monster takes. Unlike in Yu-Gi-Oh itself, attacking a monster has no effect on the player's health. Still, to prevent you from losing your monsters, these defense crests can be very useful, and in some cases, might even allow you to damage the attacking monster. Traps. I have literally no idea. I'm sure that there's something. Summon. And this is the main course. This is how you get your monsters actually on the field, and more importantly, create a playing field as you go. So you get to choose 3 dice every turn. If you roll 2 summon crests, congratulations, you can now summon a monster that's inside one of those dice. Once you choose a monster to summon, you place that dice on the board and unfold it. As you know, unfolding a die can be done in a number of different ways. And I always wondered if you were just stuck by the specific way the dice were manufactured, if you used them in the real game. And I still do wonder about that in the physical board game, but in this video game, you get to choose what kind of pattern you need, making it much more versatile than what I imagine a physical game would be. Do be aware though, once you summon a monster, of course you can't use that die again, because it's now on the board. So any crests that might have been useful on that die to roll later are now out of your reach to use. This is your way to building your path towards the enemy until you eventually reach each other, or as happens more often, you both try to connect to each other's player character without crossing paths, just to make a direct path to your opponents. It's as easy as that. You would think. You see, just like you have multiple different levels of monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh, some of which require a sacrifice, you have level 1, 2, 3 and 4 monsters here too. the higher the level, the more difficult to summon. How could rolling a dice be more difficult, I hear you ask? Level 1 monsters have a lot of summon crests on their dice, meaning that you're likely to roll 2 of them on most turns, especially if you have 3 dice in total. But as you go up higher levels, the likelihood decreases because you have less and less summon crests per die. This does of course mean that the higher level dice contain more other kind of crests, like movement and attack. So even if you don't get to summon with those level dice, you can still keep those crests. You see, unlike summon crests, which go to waste if you can't use them, all other kind of crests end up in a pool for later use. So any failed roll isn't really failed, but provides you with crests that could end up being very valuable later in the game. With all of that out of the way, how do you actually decide which dice to roll at the start of every turn? Well, you could manually select the 3 choices you want, or you could tell the game the result you want. These 2 boxes on the top provide you with the chance to say, I want to be able to summon this monster, or I want to be able to roll these crests, and then the game will automatically pick the 3 die combination that's most likely to give you those results. This is a really nice bit of convenience. You could argue that it makes the game a little bit easy, and yeah, it does. But it also helps the pacing of a match a lot, since you only have to think, I need movement crests now, and the game will figure out the details, rather than having to look through all of the dice that you have every single turn to come up with what to do. It's important to have a good mix of lots of level 1 dice, so you can start to build your path in the early game, but also some higher level monsters to do the actual fighting with. Where an interesting balancing mechanic comes in though is the fact that for level 3 and level 4 monsters, you are going to more or less need to have 3 dice of that level, since the odds of rolling a summon with just 2 dice is just too damn low. But once you do summon, you lose one of those dice. So do you add a 4th high level die so you can summon more high level monsters, or do you add another low level die to gain advantage early in the game in building out your path? Generally I have found that the latter is the better option, but you do of course have the choice to focus more on the late game battles rather than the early game building. Of course, this will mean that you'll also pick other attack crests, and before you know it, your whole dice pool is different based on a simple strategy difference. Personally, I also didn't end up using traps all that much. They can be useful, putting them between you and your opponent's path so they can't make your way towards you as easily, but that's fixed by just building a path next to it and avoiding a trapped square. So, a long story short, the game isn't terribly well balanced. And finding a strategy that just straight up gets you to win 90% of the time isn't that hard. In a game like this, I hope to have to adapt strategies and react to what my opponent does, but in the end what ends up happening is, at least for the battles against the AI, is I just might as well be playing a single player game on a timer, getting to my opponent before my opponent gets to me, never interacting with them too much. I do believe that if you play this against an actual human being, this could be fun. But as it stands, this game gets tedious and boring fairly quickly. There's no real story mode, just a number of tournaments, which reward you with new dice when you beat opponents and money when you win the whole tournament, which you can then spend on more dice, rinse and repeat until you've collected them all. The game also just looks like a garbled mess of pixels. They decided to go with an isometric view, which I don't love in general, but ends up confusing me more than once about the movement controls on the grid. The controls act as if you're looking from the perspective of where your player character is on the edge of the board, but the camera is tilted about 45 degrees from that and also looking down on the board on a similar angle. If the monsters were 3D models and the game had a slightly higher resolution, I would understand this choice. As it stands, the monsters don't look anywhere near detailed enough. I honestly would prefer just a top-down view of the board. That way, we can see what is happening everywhere at all times. If we get rid of the overlay map when placing down pieces, which makes the UI feel just really busy and really cluttered, and would probably just result in an overall better looking game. Of course, it's visually slightly less interesting. But visually interesting with a bad look is much worse than something that's plain looking but at least has crisp visuals. Well, I've made a pretty positive video about a game that didn't provide a great experience for me. Again, I think the game itself, Dungeon Dice Monsters, has promise, and is more than just Yu-Gi-Oh! With dice, as I had first expected. So the board game gets the benefit of the doubt. The video game, however, not so much. I mean, it's not like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is known for having great video games either, so I guess that makes sense. Don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. I have some really fun videos coming up in the next couple of months.